to order, and I'm going to simultaneously call the Housing Authority and the successor agency to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councilman Daley.
Here.
Councilman Brower.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Popescu.
Here.
Mayor Rigsby.
Here.
Councilman Duper is absent. There is a quorum.
Okay, we will start with the report out of the closed session items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City Council was in closed session regarding item C on the agenda, employee evaluation. Evaluation occurred. There's nothing else to report at this time. Also, as to the successor agency, there was a closed session real property matter where report and direction was given. There's no final action to report at this time.
Okay, thank you. We will start with the invocation and pledge of allegiance, and I will do the honors since Councilman Duper is not here. Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you for your leadership of our world, our country, and our community. We ask that you help us to achieve the goals of our citizens and to honor your leadership by reflecting your principles and your love. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Okay, public, this is your chance to make a comment on any items not on the agenda. Is there any takers? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to conflict of interest, which we'll deal with as individually needed by items as they arise. We'll start with the public hearing, TEFRA Council Bill R-2012-29. Special counsel, please.
Good evening. The item in front of you is a public hearing pursuant to TEFRA, which is the 1986 Tax Act. 1986 Tax Act required that in order for a public agency to issue bonds that were benefiting a private party, typical for conduit financing, that the state allocate, and also that the highest local elected body hold a public hearing. And that really is the sum and substance of the requirement. The city clerk has caused an advertisement to appear for tonight's hearing, and this requirement, this resolution and this action would be to satisfy the statutory requirement under TEFRA that a public hearing take place. Should this proceed, and should the county act to authorize the allocation of home funds that's anticipated, then if all goes well, we would come back with a later action actually authorizing the issuance of bonds. But the only thing that the item in front of you does now is to evidence that the notice was given and the hearing has been held under TEFRA. I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Any questions? If not, then I'll call the public hearing to order. Would the public like to speak on this item? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close that. Any comments or motions?
I had a question for clarification, just make a couple of comments. I noticed that it actually says 60 senior rental units. If my recollection was correct, wasn't it 50? 40. Did it go up to 60?
It is 50.
It is 50, okay.
It's 50 units, of which 27 will be very low income, 22 low income, and 1 manager's unit.
So it's just a typo then in here?
I'm
At least on the agenda. Probably not in the,
Yeah. It's correct on the resolution.
yeah. it
Okay.
is. Okay, all right. Well, my only comment is, well, not my only comment. I have several comments. As you recall, I actually voted against this project 2 weeks ago, I guess it was. And my concern was that it wasn't clear to me the financing of it. Normally when we have these projects in front of us, there's usually a breakdown that says this is the cost, this is how much it's going to cost to do this, this, and that, and this is going to finance the various portions. So that became a little, that wasn't clear to us, at least to me. I should speak for myself. Dr. Daly actually had some really good questions regarding, there's some questions at the state level, given the elimination of the RDA, on how some of these projects will be financed. And that hasn't been clarified, and that was put in our staff report, and I appreciate that. And Dr. Daly did point that out. To me, that was a big question because, yes, he may get the funding, but if there's a issue about how much is he going to be able to pay back, then it becomes an issue for us later on. So that's a concern to me. The other issue that I had with the project was that it was a large project. It was a $14.7 million project with 50 homes that was not even in front of us in specifics. We didn't see a layout. We didn't see what they look like. We had to basically approve it based on what we saw briefly, 2 years ago. So that was a concern. From my memory of it, I really believe that the units themselves were too small. I would have liked to see more amenities. We didn't have an opportunity to really look at that. I'm concerned about the fact that it's considered senior, but yet it's very loosely interpreted as to who qualifies as a senior, since some of these units have 2 bedrooms and only one person needs to be 55 years and older. And I've talked to other folks in other communities where they have multiple issues where they'll go into what's supposed to be a senior project, but you basically have one grandparent and a lot of other members of the family who just need a place to live, and as a result is not a senior project anymore. So that was a concern. I just wanted to urge my fellow council members to slow down a little bit, not be in a rush to move things. Let's kind of think this through, do a little bit more diligent assessment of it, and make sure that we're comfortable with what we're approving, because a lot of the times that we approve things, we think everything's okay, and then we pay a price for it 3 or 4 years later. And I just want to make sure that we approve things that we're comfortable with, not just because staff says it's okay, but we ourselves work through it and understand it all. So that's my only commentary.
I will move approval, Council Bill R-2012-29. Made all my comments at the last meeting. If anyone has any interest of why I support this, just refer you back to the previous meeting.
And I'll second the motion. I would like to make a comment. My understanding, so I'd like some clarification here to be certain that I'm accurate, is that part of the push for this is to take advantage of our opportunity to secure significant money to help support the project from the county. And it's on that premise that I've been anxious to support the project. Not my only reason for supporting it, but one of them. In reference to Councilman Popescu's query about more details regarding the design of the project, I'm assuming that we'll have the opportunity to have something presented to us since we have a new developer at some point before there's a final approval. Am I correct in that?
Unless you request it.
Yeah, the project was previously approved, so it's the same
Wasn't it with a
project.
different developer, though?
No,
Same developer.
yes.
Both
It was different, that's
projects
what I'm
were
thinking.
approved.
There were
We had
two different.
we had
There were
two
two
projects
developers.
approved with 2 different developers. So, but the approval on Corporation for Better Housing was valid, and the approval for the other developer, were two valid projects at the same time.
But the council at that time chose one versus the other because of the amenities and the financing of it. So we had an opportunity to actually go through the specifics of each one. My only contention was that that was 2 years ago. So that was my concern.
The county clerk has.
First of all, I would like to say that it confirmed this morning that the Board of Supervisors did allocate the home funds today at their meeting. The other thing is that both projects were approved. Both precise plans of design were approved. The council decided to allow one developer to go forward and actually negotiate the DDA, and that did not follow through. But both designs were approved by this council.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. I mean, I agree with Councilman Popescu. I'm a little fuzzy. I remember the overall project. I'm fuzzy on just how what the specific issues may have been in the design.
And my other contention was that this project got significantly changed. It wasn't like we're just moving forward with that. It was significantly cut down by more than half. So that has some impact on the property and how it's situated, how exactly, what's the layout and all that. So it wasn't like, oh, it got approved, we're just moving forward with it because someone was able to come up with the financing. It was changed. I mean, it went from, I believe, 120 units, 125.
But is this, I know that his plan, Corporation for Better Housing, had a two-phase plan. Is this similar to Phase 1?
This is Phase 1. Both projects were approved for 152 units, and this is Phase 1, and it's because of the funding availability.
I have a question for special counsel about the senior designation. Is there a state definition for affordable housing, what constitutes seniors, or can we at some point say, well, you've got to be everyone in the household over 55?
There are two definitions that are alternative. One is one member of the household has to be over 55. The other definition is everyone in the complex has to be over 62. Either is legally permissible. They have different financing consequences, and the Affordable Housing Agreement uses the one at 55. I certainly could revisit this with the developer and see if they're amenable to going with the other standard, but it's not a discussion that I've had with them in the last several weeks. I mean, at the time it came up, they preferred the 55, which is not a surprise because with the broader market, it's more financeable. But I can revisit that with them. I simply don't know the answer.
My only comment on that is my understanding of it that some of the other senior housing complexes which allow for 55 and over make it very clear that anyone under 55 is either the spouse or a caretaker of that 55 and over. And that was one way to ensure that the complex itself is really used by seniors rather than people who try to move into affordable housing, bringing one person along, and everybody, and you've got a bunch of people coming in, and that's my concern. So,
I understand.
So it sounds like maybe you should at least talk to him about it. Is there any opposition to that? Okay. So
I can try to reach them by phone, and I can ask them from their perspective what the urgency is of this. I think they indicated they needed to have the approval soon because of other steps in the state process to obtain the financing, but I can try to reach one of the representatives by the phone and then come back. You can take up another item.
Okay. So does the current approval assume that it's 55 and it's something that's changeable?
Yes.
Okay. Then we can proceed with the vote if there are no other comments. Okay. Okay, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I oppose.
3-1 passes. Okay, we'll go to joint public hearing of the City Council and Housing Authority pertaining to the sale of property. City Clerk.
As you may know, the Bend Redevelopment Agency has several covenants for affordable housing. Both of these houses are within a development that was developed by the Gardner brothers, and we have 35 of the 58 homes covenanted. We had several homes available for sale, and then, of course, the state took its action and eliminated redevelopment agencies, and we were prohibited from doing much of anything. Now that the housing portion has gone to the Housing Authority, we are able to at least dispose of these properties. And so that is what this is concerning. There are two homes. Both of them are within that Parkside development. Both of the families are income qualified as low-income households. Both of them are capable of purchasing the homes at the low-income price. And so tonight we are asking for your approval to move forward. Each family has signed their agreement that they are prepared to go forward. And so tonight we are asking for your approval so we can open escrow and actually close on two of these sales. The covenant would run with the land for a term of 45 years. We are somewhat following redevelopment law because this is kind of new territory for us, so we feel we can't go too wrong by following that. Both resolutions would allow us to go forward. And so the recommendation is to adopt each resolution after taking any public comment.
Are there any questions? Okay, then we'll call the public hearing to order. Anybody from the public like to comment on these sales? Okay, seeing no takers, we'll close the public hearing. What's your pleasure?
How do we handle these? Each individually, or can we group them?
I think it makes sense to do A and B together and then C and D together.
Okay, then I will move Loma Linda Housing Authority Bill R-2012-06 and Council Bill R-2012-13.
I'll second that.
Is there any other comment or discussion? Okay, is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. Item C and D.
I'll go ahead and move Loma Linda Housing Authority Bill R-2012-07 and Council Bill R-2012-14.
Okay, is there any discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move to item 3, public hearing, construction of a large 66-bed memory care facility.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, the applicant JEA Senior Living is proposing to construct a 38,000 square foot 66-bed memory care facility at the property located at 11116 New Jersey Street, which is the southwest corner of New Jersey Street and Orange Avenue. The project includes a general plan amendment, which would change the land use designation from high-density residential to healthcare, and a zone change from R3 to institutional. The proposed general plan amendment complies with healthcare guiding policy 2.2.43.3 in promoting healthcare facilities that are conveniently located and well-designed to aid patients and to make a positive visual impact or contribution to the community in general. The project as conditioned also complies with Principle 6 of Measure V, which states that traffic levels of service throughout the city of Loma Linda shall be maintained at current levels, and new development shall be required to fully mitigate any impact on traffic resulting from that development. Because the subject site is located within the Historic Commission Overlay District, the Historic Commission issued a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the existing dwelling unit and accessory structures and subsequent development of the site. General plan amendment and zone change.
Excuse me. Where is the house that you're going to demolish?
Right there.
So there's an actual structure there right now?
Yes, sir.
I've driven by that. I just never saw it.
Well, it almost looks like it's a separate, I'm sorry, let me take that back. It's right there. Right there. It almost looks like it's not part of this property because there's a fence, but it's part of that little square right there. In fact, let's go back. This is the entire square, and there's a house. The development includes 41 parking spaces, complies with the parking requirements, and approximately 43,000 square feet of landscaping and open space, well above what is required in this zone. The building will measure just under 38,000 square feet in area. The development will provide access off Orange Avenue and New Jersey Street and an additional emergency vehicular access right here in the southeast corner of the property. I say that the project includes 43,000 square feet of landscaping, which is about 34% of the entire site. Development of the site will require the removal of one palm that is located here, with the possibility of another palm. It depends on the improvements in this in the public right of way. But the palm run will remain as requested by the Historic Commission. The landscape plan includes a mixture of shrubs, perennials, and ground cover. The applicant is also proposing to keep many of the existing trees located in this area. So trying to protect our remaining trees in the city. The larger trees mentioned in the landscape plan include Australian willows, crepe myrtles, fruitless olive trees, camphor trees, pink melaleuca, sweet shade, and Mediterranean fan palms. With the exception of the sweet shade, all trees will measure a minimum of 24-inch box. The single-story building incorporates a modest residential design and includes architectural elements such as stucco walls, stone veneer, wainscot accents, clay S-tail roofing, stone face veneer finishes along the gable portion of the building, and dual column porte-cochere. This is an example of one of their facilities. I believe it's in Texas or Arizona. But as you can see, the design of the building is very modest, very subdued, low-key, and complements the type of use that will be on site. The operation of the facility includes 66 beds, 24-hour residential facility, community living dining areas, therapeutic activities, daily exercise, outings, interaction with children and pets, music therapy. Staffing includes daily staffing, which includes a full-time administrator, an RN health services director, 24 hours of licensed nursing staff, and an 8-to-1 caregiver, a nursing assistant ratio on days and evenings, 2 caregivers at night, dietary service manager, cooks, dietary aides, 2 to 3 housekeeping, and laundry personnel, and a program director. 3 shifts spanning 24 hours, includes a commercial kitchen and laundry services, security and communication system throughout the facility, and the project will create approximately 36 full-time jobs for the region. Lastly, per Senate Bill SB 18, Staff sent out requests for consultation in compliance with SB 18 to the Native American tribes in the area. The required 90-day consultation period began February 2nd, and in May 2nd, sent out 3 letters, made phone calls to the different tribes. Staff received responses from 2 tribal councils, Saboba and Pachanga, and they replied with no comment. As mentioned in the staff report, staff actively sought a consultation with the individual tribal governments, both via mail and by phone, and again, only 2 responded. The tribal councils were also notified of this public hearing. Mr. Mayor, and that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. In addition, the applicant, Greg Elmore, is here in case you may have any questions of him.
I have a question for you. What is it about this that avoids the accusation that this is a spot zoning?
The future development in this area, according to, I'm not trying to mention it, but Conrad, if I'm not mistaken, there's future development in this area that includes healthcare and institutional, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's institutional across the street in New Jersey and Barton, the church and institutional to the south of the site, and future plans for institutional health care to the north and the northeast of that, which would create contiguous similar zoning and allow for a coherent blend from one zone to the other.
Okay, so the forbiddance to do spot zoning is really, it means something out of character in a spot, as opposed to changing the zoning for a project being spot zoning.
By spot zoning, it really means a spot. So if there's a contiguous areas of same zone or a blend of one zone from one intensity to another, then that precludes a spot zoning issue.
Just to follow up on that item, in your staff report, you mentioned that Planning Commission back in 2004 chose not to change the zoning and so forth. Was there any discussion as to why they chose differently the previous time and whether anything has changed or what the difference was with their findings this time versus the previous time?
I believe in 2004 the zoning was residential use with a fairly high density. That's something that we probably don't want in that area, and you know, at the time there was a great deal of high density residential construction here in the city. This zoning and this use is more appropriate for where the city seems to be going.
So no specific discussion of that, but more just in character of general direction and the surrounding area.
Correct, because in 2004, 2005, we had an old general plan that was updated and changed following Measure V, and this is more in line with the current general plan.
All right, thank you.
I had questions about the project. I don't know if it would be for you or the project person to answer.
I can try to answer them. If I can't, I'll be more than happy to bring them up.
Point of clarification, the triangle in the middle, is that open, or is it meaning that it actually is exposed to the elements, or is it just
it is exposed to the elements.
Okay,
it's
so
like a little
basically
courtyard
inside
area.
of the building there's a mini
Courtyard.
Interesting. Okay.
And just to add, excuse me, if I may, there's a gate here and a gate here. This is really to, because a lot of these patients have Alzheimer's, we really need to keep them in a secure location.
So that leads me to the other question. So what qualifies someone to actually be able to stay in this facility?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'm going to defer that question to the applicant.
Good evening. Thank you, Council. My name is Greg Elmore. I'm from Salem, Oregon. I'm with Linity Group, and we're partnered with JEA doing these projects all around the country right now. It is a memory care facility, so you're going to have some impairment Alzheimer's is the big one that everyone thinks of when we open these types of facilities. But there's special dementia type cares that they also meet. So that's why the staffing and the nursing that happens in these facilities. It is I hesitate to say lockdown facility, but for their safety, it's a bit of a lockdown facility. We have secured outdoor areas, as Guillermo was discussing. We have the 2 secure outdoor areas, and when you get into these populations, it's good to have the community feeling of these buildings. That's why we put it all on a single floor, but it's also good to break the communities up into smaller if certain residents get agitated. So it will be, it's a memory care driven facility.
And do the residents, will they be able to walk, or are some of them bedbound?
No, they are all, with our license through the state of California, they all are ambulatory.
Okay.
Just a couple of questions. What's the timetable on the project? When do you break ground after this is approved?
I am if you guys vote yes, I'm handing a check to Guillermo tonight, and we will break ground as soon as our building permits are approved.
Excuse me, let me clarify that. Okay. The check is made out to the Board of Supervisors for the county clerk.
It's not a check for Guillermo. It's our last payment so we can keep this thing moving forward. We are in for building permit right now. We have responded to first comments on building and site, and we're hoping to push dirt. I would have loved to have pushed dirt 2 weeks ago. So as soon as we get our approvals, we're moving. We actually have this facility in La Quinta as well.
And from breaking ground to grand opening, you'd estimate?
It's usually probably in the weather down here. It's probably a 10 to 12 month process. Is usually a fair bet. 10 to 12 months.
Well, I want to commend you on what I think is a good idea. From everything that I read, with the explosion with the baby boomers coming on and the explosion of all of these kinds of problems that elderly people have, and particularly in a healthcare driven community like this one, I think this is a good fit.
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we have to build these facilities right now. So, and JEA does a really good job of testing the markets and making sure that there's a need. And there's actually a need for more beds than we're putting in right now. It's just this is the model that JEA does. They build 66 beds, and they build this building all over the country. So
very good.
Thank you.
Just one other question on the facility and design. I think it's very unlikely that you won't experience demand for what you're proposing, but just to look at all scenarios, if for some reason something changed and you did not meet your demand characteristics, could this facility be changed into something else, i.e. a skilled nursing home, or what would the situation be if for some unforeseen reason that situation arose?
Sure. There are regulations that drive the memory care and separate the two types of buildings. So if it was to go to a skilled nursing type facility, there would be some modifications that would have to happen to the building. JEA does not operate skilled nursing. They have in their portfolio a couple of assisted living type facilities, but these are not. This building is not geared to that. This is a standalone memory care facility. It would be if it changed to something different, it would be a change in license. It would be a change in zone and use and everything. So this is going to be a memory care facility.
And then the final question I had, even though we haven't heard any concerns from the neighborhood, I guess we all have visions of potentially situations where you may have noise disturbances, etc. How do you deal with that, and what's been your experience in other facilities with the neighbors nearby?
Noise from our facility?
From, I guess, to try and put it as delicately as possibly, some of the patients that you would have occasionally could have verbal outbursts, etc. There certainly are occasions that happens.
Sure. The staff that will be here, there's inside that floor plan, within that floor plan, there are spaces, and they're not padded rooms or anything like that, but there's what they call quiet rooms, and the staff is trained that once a resident gets agitated, there's protocol. This is how you handle that type. I can't say that there won't be outbursts. I have done these for years, and we just don't have the problems with this population, not even as much as an assisted living. They're not violent. They're not crazy. They're just, in fact, when you go back and visit these facilities, these are the ones that you want to work with. They're generally good people. I had a 72-year-old man scale a fence and take off running because he was a track star in high school, and that's a rarity. And that's where, that was years back. And these facilities now are the windows all open, but they're governed to 4 inches. And once the window is open, they're alarmed. All the doors, and I don't want to say escape because, again, I don't want it to sound like it's a locked, but our residents don't leave, our residents don't get out, and occasionally you might get somebody that screams or yells, but they're with the staff that we have, it's taken care of quickly.
And just to add my 30 seconds, I agree with you. And you think about, we have a mental health facility, for lack of a better pun, within shouting distance of that. And there's, really has not been that I've ever heard significant neighborhood issues, even though it's technically in Redlands. It's obviously in the same neighborhood. So
Sure.
I agree with your assessment. Thank you.
Very good.
We have taken a few votes in here where I think there are some residents that would like to move a few councilmen into a secure, quiet room as well.
And I'm sure there still are.
Yeah.
And we did offer, I've been here twice for neighborhood meetings and sat there alone in a room for an hour and 15 minutes. And we've reached out to everybody and sent notices. So I think everybody in the neighborhood is aware. They're aware that we're coming, and everything that we've gotten back in writing has been positive.
The people who oppose our votes on this council will never be residents of your facility because they all have excellent memories.
Absolutely.
Yes. I just wanted to comment on the 5-sided design. Very few people talk about a roof line, but this is right in the flight path of airplanes approaching Ontario from the east. And I appreciate that you put a B-2 stealth bomber right on your roof. I like that.
Perfect. We aim to please.
Since the quality of the comments and questions have diminished, perhaps a motion would be in order. Are we at that point, or is there a...
No, we have to have a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll open the public hearing. This is your chance to comment from the public. Nobody's jumping up. Okay, it goes without comment. Public hearing's closed. Now, what's your pleasure on the items for consideration?
Do we, there's a number of items here. Do we want to take them all at one by one? I guess one of them is it's a general plan amendment, so.
Yeah, some of the items have specific vote requirements, but unless there's a particular controversy or issue, if there's a consensus, I think it would be appropriate to take them all in one action.
Item
tonight.
number D, the ordinance, is that the one we actually had to vote by, no, next time? Okay, because there's a second reading, okay. I guess without further ado, I'll go ahead and move Council Bill R-2012-26 and go ahead and move Council Bill O-201201, which is the zone change, and then also go ahead and move the precise plan of design. Is that enough?
The Councilman, the staff recommendation does include items A and B, the mitigated negative declaration and the certificate of appropriateness.
In addition to my motion, I also want to include item number A, which is the mitigated negative declaration, and item number B, which is the certificate of appropriateness.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion?
Just a general comment. I'd really like this facility. I like the fact that we're actually amending the general plan and moving from multifamily to a business use. It's really very much part of our city, not philosophy, but just general plan with everything that's happening in that area that's moving towards medical. So it really actually fits quite well. It would have been interesting if we actually moved forward with more multifamily and something we then had to put this facility in. It would have been more challenging. So good choice of changing the land use. I think it's a well thought out process. Thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, sounds like a unanimous vote. Congratulations. Okay, item number 4, presentation of 5-year capital improvement program, Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, it's that time of year again that I will present the 5-year capital improvement program for the fiscal year 2012-13 through 2016-2017. The front cover here is the Anderson Bridge seismic retrofit that we completed at the end of last year, and we did all the construction during the train was coming by, and so the project was completed and 100% paid for by the state and federal grant. A little introduction. This is a plan for the short range and mid range plan that cover 7 major categories. One is fleet that has to do with equipment, automobile vehicles. Another one is general buildings, have to do with the existing facility, the city hall, city yard, the fire station. The next category is park and recreation, with existing park and proposed park improvement. Sewer facility, storm drain facility, street light, traffic signal, and water improvement. Potential funding source. In the booklet that I provided with the staff report is detailed each funding category, but I will just go over it very fast. You're familiar with the CDBG grant? That's the money that the city received from the county of San Bernardino. That's a pass-through from the HUD money. The county fund donation, CMAQ, congestion mitigation, and also air quality program, fire equipment capital fund, fire facility fund, Measure I, which is the half-cent sale tax. There's 2 categories for a local fund and arterial fund. Hazard elimination safety program is a federal fund that the city have to apply. We apply for this grant, and we received it before. That was for the installation of traffic signal at Redlands and Richardson. We use HBRR fund. That's the grant that we used to do the Anderson Bridge seismic retrofit, and also for the Mountain View Bridge rehabilitation and widening project. Joint Power Authority bond, Land and Water Conservation Fund, Landscape Maintenance District, lease purchase, park development fee, revenue bond, Safe Route to School. We received 2, this past couple of years, we received 2 Safe Route to School funding, one for the improvement at the intersection of Redlands and California, where we put in the curb and gutter and sidewalk, and we widened the curve return there. We also used that funding for the street improvement at Orange Grove and Academy. We put in the street improvement using that grant funding. Section 130 federal grade crossing that's used for the grade separation. We don't use one here for the city, but we plan to, the city Colton, the city San Bernardino plan to use that for Hunts Lane grade crossing. They use they use Section 130 federal fund. Sewer capital fund, sewer enterprise fund, state gas tax, some infrastructure, bank loan, storm drain capital fund, street light assessment district, T20, T21, that's funding is what we used in the past, but I think the funding almost run out. Traffic system fee, Traffic Demand Act fund, underground utility, which is they call it Rule 20 and Rule 20A. We used that funding for the underground utilities on Redlands Boulevard a couple years ago. Urban Park and Recreation, we did that. We used fund before. We used this to do the playground equipment at the Hoder Crooks Park and Bailey Park. Water Capital Fund and Water Enterprise Fund, we use that for the water projects. Fleet. Even though there's 5 years right here, but the one that really I would like you to concentrate on is this current fiscal year. The item that's on current fiscal year is what listed on the this year budget. The one for future year is more like a planning document, so that put it in place so that when we have the future funding, we can use the money to purchase this vehicle and equipment. So for next fiscal year, as you know, we're pretty short of money, so we're not planning to purchase any vehicle for next fiscal year. With that in mind, we budget more money for repair and maintenance of the existing vehicles. General buildings, for next fiscal year, the only item that we budget for the facility is to repair and paint the metal roofing around the fire station. It's right here, the main fire station here at the city hall here. The following year will be for complete the fire alarm system for the city hall. We did that the past 2 years. We installed a brand new fire alarm system here at the city hall. We would like to expand the EOC facility. We would like to build a remodel restroom building at the city yard at a later year, and some fire department training towers. Again, we have no money for it right now, but it's kind of keep it in the range. Park facility, again, for next fiscal year, all we plan to do is the tree planting program. I have been doing this tree planting program for the past 10 years, and we have a lot of mature trees that is overgrown, and we trim them, we remove them, and we plant new trees. So, and we like to keep that thing going. And as we have more funding available, I would like to do more improvement at the Hoder Crooks Park restroom facility, various park improvement, and so. But again, due to funding for this fiscal year, the only thing we can afford is plant some trees and shrubs. Sewer improvement. This is the sewer project that we have completed in the past 10 years, less than that. But like this fiscal year, we completed the pipe bursting on Redlands Boulevard and part of Anderson. A couple of years ago, we installed a new main on Redlands Boulevard, and its pipe bursting is to increase the pipe capacity from existing 8-inch pipe to 12-inch pipe. And some of the older part of town that have big trees, there's some problem with the pipe was old. So what we did is we lined those existing sewer main. The way they do it is they put in like a socks, a fabric, into the existing pipeline, and then when it's cured, it's hard like a plastic, and they go in with a robot to cut the lateral at all those houses and to the sewer main. For next fiscal year, of course, we have no money, so there's no project for next fiscal year. But The following year, what we'd like to do is increase the pipe size on Rincon, which is right here. The way the city sewer system worked, we used to have a sewer treatment plant at this location. So all the sewer here are flow to this location. That is, we have a pipeline that come out here and connected all the way to the sewer treatment plant at the city of San Bernardino, where we have a joint power authority between us, city of San Bernardino, and East Valley Water District to build that facility many years ago. So what we would like to do is expand this pipe from 8 to 12 by doing pipe bursting without have to do any cut up the street. We just go in and increase the pipe size from 8 to 12. Storm drain system. Last year, we complete the pipe tunnel, the storm drain at the end of campus, where we tunnel the pipe underneath the railroad track and connect it to the existing open channel right here. This fiscal year, what we have planned to do is extend the storm drain at Benton Street to go across the railroad track. I'm sorry, right here, and tie it to the channel here at the Santee Mateo channel. Part of the funding was supposed to be from RDA, but again, with the elimination of RDA, we had to put the project on hold. So hopefully, we don't have the money for this fiscal year. Hopefully, by next year, we'll have some money to complete this project. And then later on, we will build extend. Right now, it's existing storm drain on Benton from Barton Road to the end of Benton. This portion right here behind the Racing Center is all open channel and come across the railroad track here and come out to the open channel right here. So the incident that happened, the flood that happened in December 2010, all the water, drain water from this area here come down the Willowbird Street and to the lowest spot at this location at Lawton. So what we would like to do is extend the storm drain from Benton and Barton Road to Lawton and east on Lawton to the low spot to take all the water from here and go all the way out here to Santee Mateo Channel. Yes, sir.
On one of the future projects, you have Benton Street to Anderson, replace dirt channel.
Yes.
I don't understand how you replace a dirt
You
channel.
put in the box culvert. You put in, right now it's dirt. What happened is December 10, 2010, the water come out here and overflowed the dirt channel, and the water undermined the railroad track. So the train had to stop and have the crew come out and remove the debris from the track and replace some rocks underneath. So what we would like to do is put in a box culvert where the open channel is and cover it. Similar to what we did on Barton Road.
I see, okay.
On the south side of Barton, we did that a couple of years ago. It used to be an open channel, and we built a box culvert and we cover it.
Okay. Thank you.
And funding for this is from the storm drain fund.
Does the channel that goes off of California and Reynolds Boulevard, is that part of the storm drain system that we have, or is that separate?
No, that belongs to the county of San Bernardino.
You had mentioned that you were going to attempt to get some funding to actually put in the box cover
Yes.
over there.
Yes. As part of the improvement at the intersection of Redlands and California, there was a plan that designed and approved, I think it was 13 years ago now, to be able to do a street improvement here. They have to extend the box culvert to the southeast corner at the Mission Sangha channel, and then you build a street over that channel, over the box culvert.
What's the status of attempting to get funding for that from the federal government?
We didn't get it.
Oh, okay. So you went through it and
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we will just keep trying.
Okay.
The street improvement. This is the work that have been completed during the past 11 years. We pretty much paved every street in town, one way or the other. So our street is in pretty good shape. with exception of the, when we have a utility company come out and start digging up our street. But because we have the law that said they're not supposed to dig up our street 3 years after we completed the street improvement, or if not, they have to replace our street. That's why on Van Leuven, we just completed street pavement rehabilitation last year. So when the Yucaipa Water District come out and put in the pipeline, they have to put in our street back to the condition that it was last year.
Does that apply?
Same thing with Mountain View.
What about Mission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And for example, Mountain View, we use a rubberized asphalt. They have to put the rubberized asphalt back. Okay? And so for next fiscal year, all we plan to do is using the Measure I money for the next 2 years. You can see for the next 2 years is to do Stewart Street from Anderson to Campus. Yes, it's a $3.25 million for this year, but our portion is only $250,000 from the half-cent sale tax for this year and next fiscal year. We plan to spend $120,000 for hardscape, the I-10 and Mountain View Freeway right here. We plan to do the I-10 Anderson to Tippecanoe interchange. That is a project that we work with Sandbag. The Sandbag will be the lead agency. Our local match for this fiscal year will be, well, next fiscal year will be $2 million, and the following year will be another $2 million. The funding for that comes from the Regional Transportation Fund. And like every year, we set money aside for repair sidewalk or put in a new sidewalk at various location. Yes, sir.
And I do want to express public appreciation that we're going to clean up our on-ramps and off-ramps here.
Yes, I will try.
So I appreciate that very much.
Yes.
Make them look more attractive.
And then following the next 2 years, then we'll go back and start doing more service seal and do pavement rehabilitations. For the further year, again, we put this aside, Redlands, California, but we have no funding at this point. But by putting it on the plan, at least you know that when we have funding, we would like to do this improvement. Water improvement plan. Again, these past 11 years, we have been replaced a lot of old pipeline. We put in 3 new water wells, repair reservoir. We put in 2 water treatment facility. So next fiscal year, all we plan to do is replace the existing water main down on Daisy Street, Tulip, Acacia, and also at Pablo Street from Van Leuven to right here to the bridge. And we're going to expand the pipeline from 8-inch to 12-inch. Funding for that will be from the county CDBG grant fund. Another big project that we plan to spend for next fiscal year is replacing water meters, similar to what we did this year. This fiscal year, we completed last fiscal year, we completed almost 900 water meters, the one in yellows and the one in red. The yellow was done by the contractors, the one in red was done by the city crew. This fiscal year so far, the city crew already installed 170 meters, replacing them. So next year, we plan to do another 810 meters, and we plan to go from where we stop right here at the Edison easement, and this area west of Barton Road, south of Barton, I'm sorry, that's Bryn Mawr, west of Bryn Mawr, south of Barton, all the way to Anderson, South Barton, this area. And we're going to do the single-family resident first. We're not going to do the townhouses for right now. There's a townhouse right here and here. So majority will be on the residential area.
And again, the reason this is a priority is because the new meters give us a more accurate reading,
yes,
which in fact brings more revenue in for the water we're selling.
And also ask people to conserve water, because the law that came out last January last year, the state mandate that the city had to reduce water consumption by 10% by 2015 and 20% by 2020. So the goal is to ask people to conserve, by use less water. If you use more water, then you pay for it. And that's in my presentation. Any question? And again, I will come to you every year and update this 5-year CIP programs. Yes, sir.
The only comment I was going to have, and I could save it for when you present the budget, I think, it is sobering to see the challenging fiscal times we're in and look through this list of all the things that ideally we would be spending some money on to keep up or improve, and there is no money for. And we certainly hope that things will improve, but I think we all have to be mindful of how challenging our fiscal environment is, obviously, thanks largely due to things the state did to us, but also the overall economic situation. But at least we have a roadmap.
I think he was being too diplomatic. We do have the money. The state needs it to pay back campaign supporters. Simple as that.
Thank you. Okay, no action required on that.
It could be on the section, item J. Item J, I'm sorry, J10, and then category.
Okay. So the next item is the consent calendar.
Move approval.
I'll second it. Just a quick question on item number 9.1. Is the money allocated helping replace signs or add more signs?
Is add new sign,
Okay,
the trail
'cause I
name
know
sign.
some of the other signs got knocked down. So
Yes,
those have
this
been
is the third
replaced.
time that we've been put it up. The first 2 times, people kind of stealed it.
Okay, so now you're putting, and for that amount, how many signs will we be able to put up?
We already did all of them.
Oh, so that covers all of them?
Yes, and now I know I was hoping that we would get paid sooner, but we already did them, and now
see.
the county going to reimburse us for it.
Great. Thank you. You guys are doing a good job on that.
Just to follow up to Mayor Pro Tem's question, are we doing anything to make the replacement signs potentially more durable and theft resistant, et cetera?
Yes. The way the old sign is like a street improvement. I mean, like the street name sign. We have a metal pole and a smaller sign. Well, what they did is they just took the sign because it's so small and put it in the backpack. The new sign that we put in is a 4 inches wide, and probably 6 foot long. And we bury at least 3 feet of it, or 2 feet of it underground. So it's hard for them to pull it out, first of all, and carry that sign down the hill.
Maybe we can electrify them too or something.
I can't do that.
We can have metal detectors at Hulda Crooks Park.
Since we're discussing that, just on a side note, a resident did come up to me and express some concern about the fact that there were a number of motorized motorcycles, obviously, up there, and we're just wondering if there's anything we can do about it. But our sheriff's department doesn't really go up there, do they?
We do once in a while, but now what's happening is we have more and more people using the trail and the bicycle using the trail, so they kind of keep an eye on them and govern themselves. So
The problem is apparently lately there's been some motorcycles up there, and it's becoming a safety hazard for some of the bicyclists because they come out of nowhere and you can almost run over somebody. So.
Okay, was there a motion on the consent calendar? I forgot. Okay, and there was a second. Okay. Any other discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. Move to item 10, joint meeting, City Council and Housing Authority regarding the budget.
this one is sent by Diana. I did the last one, so now it's her turn.
And yes, as the city manager mentioned, he did do the presentation last meeting and he went over the general fund budget, and kind of the budget committee also came in and did their presentation and their recommendations on the current budget proposal. So this is just kind of the standard overview, kind of just telling you, kind of doing a comparison of the current year and how we estimate it's going to end and the proposed budget. And as usual, we cover the general fund, which the city manager went over last meeting, and then we cover the city as a whole, which now only includes the general fund, the special revenue funds, and enterprise funds. We no longer have a redevelopment agency, and we now have the housing authority, which we will be presenting the budget for it. This is just an overview of our beginning fund balance for both of the years. So the current budget, we were proposing a beginning available fund balance of $3.8 million, and this is unreserved, undesignated for specific purposes, just our general operating budget. We do have the rainy day budget, which we adopted as a formal policy to be a reserved budget for emergency purposes only, and it would take an act of council if we ever needed to use that money.
Can I add one thing? Like I mentioned at the last meeting, the reason we have this beginning available fund balance is a lot of funding that we put under revenue is projected revenue. We don't have the money yet. For example, we're still waiting for $500,000 from FEMA. We're still waiting for $500,000 from the State Department of Finance. So what we do is we use this fund balance as a fund to float floated before we receive those money.
We also have the equipment replacement fund, which is $1.25 million, which has been identified to replace equipment. And as the Budget Committee mentioned, they would like us to formulate an actual replacement schedule with, identifying all the equipment with the city. And it's just been, we started working on it. It's just been a matter of staffing and priorities that we haven't been able to finalize those schedules and those items on the schedules. So we have a total in the general fund of close to $8.6 million that we project to end the year with. And then, as you can see, we basically carry that over into next year, and we're projecting to basically stay close to our $8.6 million. We'll actually be adding a little bit to the general fund balance if our projections hold up. And here you can see we highlight we just use our available, our $3.8 million. We don't identify the reserves in this schedule, and we show our revenue usage, our expenditures, and what we project to be our available ending fund balance for the 2 years. And as mentioned, we're pretty close to where we started and where we project to end the current year and the next year.
I'm just curious, in the revenue and resources, what are the assumptions we're making in, it's not a significant drop in revenue, but what are the assumptions we're making that lead us to project lower revenue?
Actually, one of the major revenues in the current year is, as the city manager mentioned, the reimbursements from FEMA and the state for the winter storm we had in 2010. Mm-hmm. There were projects that were completed this fiscal year, and so we are expecting to receive the reimbursements by the end of June. So we projected the revenue. But since we have made those expenditures, we'll be declaring the revenue as a receivable, since we do expect to receive it within our accounts receivables policy says that if we expect to receive an item within 60 days of the fiscal year ending, we declare it as a revenue to offset the expenditures of that fiscal period. And here we just highlight the top 7 revenues. And these top 7 revenues basically total 80% of our revenue sources for the general fund. So as you can see, we're heavily dependent on sales tax, which is our major revenue source, overhead from other funds, our capital projects, which have been dwindling, but we do have some additional projects coming in. The motor vehicle license also, which the state continues to take away a little bit more. Our refuse services, property taxes, we basically pretty much we're keeping stable. Our franchise tax fee as well, pretty much keeping stable. So our revenue sources basically are mirroring almost the current year budget. We really didn't project too much growth into it unless we were seeing the growth in the current year. And then our expenditures here, you'll see the major drops will be in the general government, and again, that has to do with the expenditures for the disaster and the storm, so you'll see that will be one of the major drops. With the loss of the redevelopment agency, we had to let go some individuals that were allocated to the general fund as well. So in the administration, you'll see a drop for staffing. In the police services, they have also cut back on one of the deputy positions, or the hours on the deputy hours. And then community development, you'll see an increase. We are anticipating additional development projects, and with that we get additional revenue, but our contract with Wildan, who does our building permits, allow them to receive 65% of what we collect.
So
It's a pass-through fund.
I was going to ask.
Is the money we receive for plan checking fee, inspection fee, and so therefore we have more revenue and we have more expenditures.
I see. Okay.
And one big thing is 50% of the associate planner was, at the beginning, was budget using the RDA funding, but now 100% is general fund.
Okay, so this is at least in part where we anticipate additional projects that are going to come through that feed this. Okay.
And another thing is the, like I mentioned in the last meeting, is we start allocating the liability. Before it used to be all under general government, but now we are taking it to individual department, and so
Okay.
now so.
And that will be reflected in the fire department, their increase, you'll see. And that's basically, as the city manager mentioned, the allocation method of our workers' compensation and general liability insurance. We needed to come up with a different formula as far as allocating so we can reflect really where the departments and how much a department is really costing us as far as manpower and liability as far as insurance coverage, where before we would charge it all to general government.
Okay, I think I understand. I'm just doing my homework last night, then obviously it jumps out that expenditures are being reduced in all areas with the exception of two. So I think I understand community development, and fire department is some restructuring of the benefits.
Of the insurance
Okay.
allocation.
Okay,
Because they have the most personnel.
okay. Thank you.
I had a question. In regards to every single one of those categories, within that, with the exception of police services, is the pension portion completed in each one of those, or is it part of a particular fund that pays for all of those?
The pension that we are now funding for the medical retirement, it's allocated to the departments
Okay.
in the personnel cost.
I know there's been a great deal of talk in the news about the fact that based on the current situation and the way PERS has invested its monies, have we assessed to see whether we may have to contribute more to meet our obligations?
We have not assessed it.
Okay.
PERS, I know their board have had hearings, and I know they recently changed their rate, so they are projecting rate increases for the next couple of years.
Okay. Are we taking that into account too?
Yes.
But at this point, it doesn't look like we're increasing it to try to, in anticipation of that.
We've increased in the departments where they are, and one of them would be fire, would be an
Okay.
example, because they have the most personnel.
Okay.
So some of their personnel costs would have gone up. It is taken into account, but also retirement liability and medical retirement liability are amortized over the life of an individual. So they do a whole actuarial study, so it's not like we have to pre-fund it all. It's just we fund through annual contributions based upon wages and salaries, and then the medical is calculated a little differently, is based upon the benefit that we actually committed
So
to.
if the state thinks that we may not have adequate funds, they would actually advise us that in order to meet our obligations, we may have to allocate more money to those funds?
PERS will let us know. We get an annual rate increase or
Okay, just,
a
okay.
study. They do a 2-year study, and we do get those rate increases. They also give us the projected rate increase for the following year. And so when we're doing preliminary budget analysis, we'll project those increases until we get the final study from them.
And they will, sounds to me like we may get another report from them within the next 12 months. Okay, thank you.
I can't help but just comment on the PERS issue. If you followed the PERS system up until, I think, just within the last year, they've been projecting a 8% return on their investments. They finally grudgingly reduced it to 7.5%. You show me any other pension fund that believes they can consistently, in the last 5 years and going forward, can return those kind of returns, and I think any financial expert would say they're dreaming. So it's very frustrating. I don't think we can accurately plan on what the true costs are going to be, but I guarantee you they're going to be higher than anything that they've led us to believe so far. I do not believe they can achieve a 7.5% per annum return on their investments. That would be better, like I say, than virtually anyone else out there.
And let's hope they didn't invest in Facebook.
Or maybe they shorted it, hopefully.
And so here, for the total expenditures, the main difference would be here in the total would be for the disaster reimbursements that were expenditures that we incurred, and we should be getting reimbursements here shortly. And here you'll see that pretty much our revenues and expenditures were matched, and we're just projecting a small increase of $18,700 to our fund balance for the current fiscal year. I mean, this is the proposed, sorry.
And again, because your direction to me from the very beginning is we have to live within our mean, so our expenditures is within our revenue. So I want to point it out.
And this will reflect the whole city, which includes the enterprise funds, our special projects funds, our capital improvement funds, will all be reflected in this. So this includes the city. And pretty much all funds we've pretty much held to the current year. Like we said, the only major changes have been in the general fund for the disaster. So there's been a reduction there. And the bigger one has been, as Jarb mentioned, in the CIP plan, the almost $2 million for the I-10 Tippecanoe interchange contribution that we have to make. So that will be where you see the reduction flowing through in the city funds. But as far as like sewer, capital, and water enterprise, the one where we are seeing some improvement is in the LLCCP revenue. We are doing some more. Conrad's been very good as to retaining commercial clients, so we are seeing a significant increase in the revenue stream from the LLCCP. So that's a positive. And here you'll see the LLCCP revenue, and pretty much, everything we've tried to keep status quo, deferring projects to later, capital purchases to later, but just trying to maintain the current operations and only address urgencies that we feel need to be addressed, or obligations to other agencies that we need to make.
Remind me again, the LLCP fund helps fund some personnel?
LSCCP fund funds both of our IT tech people, as well as provide internet service and support for all of our mainframe and application use.
So
Basically,
it decreases
we're getting
the-
most of our IT
Within house, okay.
in-house through that fund.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and these are our expenditures for all the city, the major funds, and as you can see, capitals are, you can see the big jump in capital expenditures. Other funds, you'll see the drop in other funds, and that's just revenue streams that have dried out as grants. We don't have as many grants coming through, so you won't see the revenue or the expenditures in those funds. Also, some reduction in gas tax money and other sources that we get from state sources or other agencies. So we've seen a loss in revenue, so of course, no expenditures to match those.
On the water fund, a decrease in that, is it because you anticipate that people are going to be using less water?
No, it's because we have more projects. So we use money in fund balance in water fund to do improvement.
And this will show the major change in our fund balance for all the city as a whole. It's about $2 million, and as mentioned before, it's the contribution to the I-10 to Tippecanoe. That's the major one. And then in the general fund, we have the disaster reimbursement. And here we have our new Loma Linda Housing Authority, which, thanks to the state, we had no beginning fund balance. So the only revenue sources we currently have are from revenue streams of property that was owned by the redevelopment low-mod housing fund that were then transferred to the housing authority. So those properties that generate revenue are supplying the current source of revenue. The expenditures, we've significantly reduced them just to basically maintain operations, maintain the current properties we own, and legal services and consultant services.
What percentage of the proposed budget in expenditures is attributed to legal services?
It's not going to be that much anymore. This year and the beginning of next year, it'll be more because of the oversight board and the housing authority with all the agreement, but it's going to be down to next to nothing for next fiscal year.
So we're proposing $106,000 in expenses. So what percentage of that is it going to be attributed to legal issues?
We have a breakdown. If you look in the section under housing authority, there's a line-by-line items on there.
It's $20,000 we've allocated for legal services, and that includes the city
Thank you.
attorney and special counsel. And as the city manager mentioned, there is a resolution to adopt the budget for the housing authority, and there is detail similar to what we included in our budget document for those line items. And right now, they're our best guess. We really don't know. Some of them we know monthly cost, and we can make those projections, but some of them are just...
So help me understand this. I know, for example, that we normally get a couple $100,000 from the IVDA for housing. That money's on hold for now, but if that was released, how would that impact this budget?
According to legal counsel, we should be able to get that money and put it into the housing authority.
Okay.
But there is some debate with the state.
What's going to happen? I understand.
The interpretation by the Department of Finance.
And if that were to take place, that means that suddenly we would show revenue of $200,000 into this fund?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
But right now, the Department of Finance said any money coming in will go to the state. That's why we're not putting in.
Yeah, they're kind of throwing a wrench in our ability to...
And correct me if I'm wrong, we actually ended up, before we were the Housing Authority, we had about $900,000 in this
correct.
And that money went to the state, basically?
Actually, we still have it.
Uh-huh.
It's just, I'm holding on to it.
Okay.
I have not turned it over to the state. There is some ability to use that to play the obligations that we
Okay.
currently have. So we will be having a debt service payment due for the housing bonds that were issued through the redevelopment agency, Loma Housing Fund. So my plan is to use that money to
Pay
pay for
down,
that
okay.
debt service.
Okay, thank you.
Basically, we're just, as every year we have, since the economic downturn, we've just been very conservative in our revenue projections, and then JARB and the staff have been very conscientious of our expenditures, and he's been, taking the lead on instituting cuts and cutbacks and pulling in the reins wherever necessary. So I just want to thank all the department heads and all the staff for all their hard work and their contribution to the budget.
Again, I say the same thing. The staff helped me a lot. Jeff Benders, Steve, Conrad, Scott with the fire union group, Jeff and Diana. I mean, boy, we work very fast, and I think we probably won the first city in the county, San Bernardino, that if you approve the budget tonight, we'll be the first one.
I'd like to just add to Jarb's comment there. Just for my department in particular, when I see an increase, it's almost disheartening because it doesn't feel anything like the work that's gone on over the last several months. And truly, that is a transfer of $150-some thousand from general government, our reallocation, some code enforcement contract costs that are a new addition to our department. It didn't live there. So those are the increase for employees. Within that, there's roughly a $250,000 of employee benefit and decreases that don't reflect there adequately. So just in comment, I'd like to really thank Scott, Jarb, and a lot of work that went on with our city manager and our labor groups to get there. So there was a lot going on that isn't necessarily reflected there, and thanks to all our employee groups.
Yeah, I'd like to reinforce that by thanking the fire employees for actually taking the lead in helping achieve this budget. It's not often that you have a labor unit that takes the lead in establishing a tight budget, and that's we thank you very much for that. It's greatly appreciated.
I would just make a general comment that we're all very conscious of the fact that we're having to live within our means, and we're doing everything we can to provide city services with limited amounts of money. With that in mind, we are working and striving to try to figure out ways to bring revenue, not necessarily to make government bigger, but to bring in the revenues to provide the services and enhance the services, to have better roads and better sewers and better parks and many other things that we as residents enjoy. So we're working consciously towards moving in that direction. It's been very challenging to get much development. We're focusing more on the commercial end of it. We're getting a little bit of interest that otherwise wasn't there before a couple of years ago. There was always an opportunity, but it's always challenging because you deal with multiple players, and a lot of the times you don't always have agreement between the property owners and the people who are proposing the projects. But my sense of it is that we seem to be in a better position now with having some possible future commercial projects now than we were 2 years ago. So there's hopefully some light at the end of the tunnel that we can help generate a little bit of extra income to improve our services. But I do appreciate all the hard work that the staff has been putting into this. Some of us sit on various other committees with other agency officials from other cities, and by far this is the least controversial and least stressful budget that we have to deal with compared to many other cities, and we are fortunate to have good staff to do that. Thank you.
Just a couple of minutes of comments. I agree with everything that's been said, and again want to add my thanks to staff and employees for all they've done. And being the senior guy up here, I guess I'm entitled to maybe a minute of reminiscing and railing at the same time. When you look back over the tradition of the city and its fiscal policies, I think we've come a long way over the last number of years, from at one point having virtually no reserve, no rainy day, no equipment reserve, to very prudent ones, and lots of people to thank, and especially I think Budget Committee has led that effort and deserve a lot of credit. Then when virtually every city, including ours, built their budgets around 30-plus-year-old redevelopment law that the state gave us, and then that rug is literally yanked out under your feet overnight. The way current staff and city manager has been able to at least react to that is, I think, very impressive when you look at other cities. There are other cities that literally are projecting running out of cash in the next 90 days. They don't know how they're going to pay their bills. It's true there are some cities that are way better off than us that are, quotes, rich cities, and there's always going to be some rich cities. But any other cities our size with our resources, I think it's hard to find one that's done a much better job. The final rail that have to end up with, when you look at our, correct me if I'm wrong, but RDA and general funds and city expenditures, we're well over 10% and maybe 20. I don't know if you look back compared to next year's budget compared to 2 years ago in cuts of expenditure. The state is stealing our money with redevelopment agency funds. Their budget has increased in expenditures every year, and the quotes draconian cuts next year actually aren't cuts when you look at it. At best, it's staying even on expenditures. So they take cities' money, so we have to make huge cuts, and they refuse to make those cuts, and it just is exasperating. But being on the bottom of the food chain, we're left with that. So sorry, my reminiscing and my railing for the moment.
I'm not quite sure how to follow that, but I'll try. Just a brief remark to reiterate what has already been said for any of our residents that may happen to be watching on the television. This represents collaboration in the best sense of the word across all of the departments under the strong leadership of Jarb and Diana, and I want the citizens of Loma Linda to know that this has been a humongous effort. There's been a lot of pain that's been shared across this budget, and I appreciate what the Budget Committee has done in providing some guidance, but I particularly appreciate the leadership of the city, and including all of the departments. So this is painful, and hopefully we'll survive this year, and the economy will begin to turn around and things will get a little bit better. But I'm very impressed, and I hope that people that recognize you, Jarb, will offer their congratulations as you walk the trails of South Hills back here. Good job to you and your team.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the council? Can we take everything in one gulp?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you may approve the staff recommendation approving the budget, including items A through L.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve staff recommendation of items A through L of item number 10, which is a joint meeting of the City Council and the Housing Authority regarding the fiscal year 2012-2013 budget.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Any opposition? We have unanimous approval by the Housing Authority and the City Council simultaneously. Item number 11, an item of special interest.
Yes, I have Jeff Peterson here to present the report.
Honorable Mayor, council members, this item before you is of a different note than the one that was very seriously discussed. This has to do with the request to remove stop signs on Lawton Avenue at Hillcrest. This item has to do with only the Lawton Avenue stop signs. This item was taken to the Traffic Advisory Committee at the last meeting. It was forwarded per request. It has been studied for warrants. It looked at the history of this particular intersection. Turns out that many years ago, this Hillcrest continued all the way through across Barton Road and accessed the medical center and VA. At that time, there was some high speed, and there was a lot more volume, and we also experienced some accidents. Due to that, the decision at that time was to install stop signs to help control that, and it brought those things into conformance with acceptable levels. And followed very closely was the installation of the Barton Road medians, which then stopped that particular connection. Since then, we have experienced a much less volume on Hillcrest, and the volume on Lawton has basically maintained, if not increased, somewhat. The warrants are no longer met for the installation of the stop signs. Stop signs and other traffic control devices are meant to improve a particular situation if at all possible, or there's volumes, there are speeds, there are geometry, there may be sight distances that are addressed through some type of installation. So what we're asking at this time is that you consider the Traffic Advisory's recommendation to remove the stop signs on Lawton Avenue and the installation on the cross street, Hillcrest, of signs that state that the cross traffic does not stop. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
I had two questions. Have you notified the homeowners along Lawton that that stop sign will be removed?
No, we have not.
Okay. Is there any concern for those who actually have driveways who may think that people are going to stop and they choose not to stop? Because sometimes, at least the ones that are right next to the stop sign, it actually helps them when they come out of their driveway, but suddenly if that car doesn't stop anymore, it might become an issue. Have we thought about educating them a little bit about what's going to happen?
Yes, one nice thing about that location is a little dip.
Okay, so they have to slow down a little bit.
They have to slow down. So.
Okay.
I have a feeling I may be the minority on this one, but so be it. Generally defer to Traffic Committee with their recommendations, but I personally am not in favor of removing the stop sign. I understand your explanations. I understand some of the reasons that you've given and so forth, but it's impossible to ever study the actual effects till you actually do something again. And you can make projections, you can do your warrants and so forth, but I truly believe there will be an increase in hazards with removing stop sign and the flow of traffic, especially during rush hour in the evenings and mornings when the traffic is relatively fast and furious through there. And I would hate to try and turn onto that street during those times without the four-way stop. So I respectfully do not agree with the recommendations.
I wanted to point out that it's my observation that the city of Redlands is an example of how not to control traffic flow. I've joked with them many times, the city council in Redlands, that their town was named after all the red stop signs. It had nothing to do with the dirt. It was the stop signs. And I've spoken with some of their city council, and they say that the citizens are in favor of controlling speed through placement of stop signs. And I think it's widely acknowledged that it's technically against the law to control speed by use of a stop sign. And maybe you can give us some of the legalities of that.
That is absolutely true. What we also have noticed is that if there are an abundance of signage, that people will tend to ignore them, unfortunately. There is also a perception that they may have lost time, and they will purposely increase speed, rabbit starts, et cetera, in order to regain the perceived lost time. We have those issues as well to deal with. There also may be some increase in pollution as the car is stopped and accelerates again. So AQMD is in favor of a smoother flow.
Not to belabor this too long, but I know the three of you actually drive on Lawton on a regular basis, going back and forth to work. I can already know where Dr. Brower states, but what would be your reasoning for removing the sign for you personally? And I'm just curious what Dr. Daly thinks about just the traffic flow, because you go on Lawton often.
Well, for me, it's not so much personal. My temperament appreciates efficiency and decries inefficiency. And I've personally traveled over that intersection many times, and I can't recall very many times out of thousands of times driving through there where there's been someone in the cross traffic that went before I did as we both approached. It's almost an unused crossing relative to the traffic flow on Lawton. And I look at that, you go downhill, you stop against a gravitational gradient, and then you accelerate up a hill against a gravitational gradient. And it just wastes huge amounts of energy. And, you know, you can believe whatever you want on global warming. I personally think it's a bit overblown as an issue, but just from an efficiency standpoint, it makes no sense to haul 2-ton vehicles all day long down to a stop and accelerate them back up again for no benefit whatsoever to the flow of traffic on the cross street. So I see this as, to me, this is an efficiency improvement that's long overdue.
So this is even during rush hours, even when there were a lot of cars coming on Lawton?
All the more reason not to stop 2-ton vehicles by the thousands.
A somewhat less elegant answer, but I can't remember the last time I saw a car on Hillcrest waiting for me, or me waiting for it.
And the other issue is that when we first approached this process that, you know, I've had something to do with, which is eliminating unnecessary stop signs, we eliminated a whole series of stop signs on Mission Road. And there hasn't been any increase in accidents that I can see. In fact, it's, I think, eliminated a lot of frustration for all those people who live there. You know, it's enough that they live in small lots with very narrow streets. I think it would be just adding insult to make them stop 5 times on their way out to California Street. So what we're looking for is a motion then.
I'll go ahead and move item number 11, removal of the stop sign at the intersection of Lawton and Hillcrest.
I guess that would leave me for the second.
Okay.
I believe parliamentarily wise, I could second and still vote against it.
Oh, okay.
But I will leave it up to you.
You just can't argue against it if you make the motion. Just one final comment before we have the vote. When there's not much of a budget for big projects, I say we can always afford a few hacksaw blades and a little bit of sandpaper to remove the paint on the street. So, okay, let's. Is there any final discussion? Is there any opposition? One vote in opposition. It passes 3-1. Thank you very much. Are there any reports of councilmen?
Just wanted to bring 2 quick items. You reminded me of sandpaper, and I forgot to mention this to Jar, but there was a number of graffiti that appeared along the wall that you can only be seen from the freeway. That's already been, okay, so you're aware of that, okay. My only other thing that I wanted to mention is I want to see if we can try to make an effort into trying to improve the process in which we're given the agendas. I know that we're going to have one change on the council, and I'm very much aware of the fact, well, actually, I'm not completely aware of this, but Mr. Daly, do you own an iPad, do you not? You do not. Okay. I thought everybody owned an iPad, but I guess not. Well, I'd like for us to look into the possibility of transitioning some of our agendas to iPads. This last agenda was really thick. I know it doesn't happen that often that it's this thick. However, even the previous one we had, I believe, was the assessment district, and that was nice, big, thick document. We're going to have additional projects with a lot of details. I'm sure that it would save a great deal of trees, but also time-wise of making all these photocopies. So I would like for us to look into that, and perhaps the staff can come back with some sort of a report. It wouldn't cost any additional money. I think if some of us already own our iPads. So that's something for us to consider. I know a lot of other cities are adopting it.
What we can do is, if you prefer, like, I can email all the. Right now, the way when we print this, we scan the whole thing. So this document is already on the website. So you can view the document right now on your iPad.
Yeah, but if viewing it through the website, it wouldn't be efficient. You actually have to. You would have to email me the actual PDF with the whole. All of them.
We can do that
there.
right now. And for the councilmen that prefer hard copy, because I do hard copy, I still prefer to have a hard copy so I can write down and
that would be
highlight
great for us to start looking into that.
That'd be no problems. Yes.
But ultimately, I think, from my understanding, from seeing other cities, there's a huge effort in trying to go through the process of having to photocopy this. These are hundreds and hundreds of pages that could save time-wise.
But the challenge I have is these past 3 years, there's been how many versions of iPad, and I don't want to have to replace the iPad every year because when the new one coming out.
Well,
so.
My suggestion is we don't have to buy any iPads. Most of us already own them, with the exception of Dr. Daly. I'm sure he'll get one soon. But something for us to consider.
I just don't worry too much about printing paper, because if you go up to the Pacific Northwest, they have pulp mills that are surrounded by forests of pulp wood that harvest just like you harvest tomatoes. And so I don't worry about the paper so much. But as long as we have both options, I think would be fine. May I ask a question also from our Sandbag representative? Just an update, because I've been asked about the I-10 Tippecanoe interchange, and people are beginning to see some things happening, at least on the north side of the freeway. And can you tell us if we're on schedule for that, and specifically when we should start seeing changes in the intersection, such as street closures and that type of thing? People are concerned that they don't know just exactly when this is all going to hit.
Well, the project, for financial reasons and because of some delays in acquiring some of the properties north of the freeway, the project has been broken into 2 phases. Phase 1 is on our side of the freeway and will begin so far on schedule in August of this year. Is there a...
More like September or November. Yeah.
So... Yeah,
it's moved from May to September.
Everything
now.
always slides, but my latest report was August, and it's already slipped since earlier this month. And the project on the south side is the smaller portion of the project, because it's basically widening of that segment between Redlands Boulevard and the freeway. And I think Phase 1 involves widening of the opening under the freeway. Or is that Phase 2?
No, the Phase 1 is widening the off-ramp also, pretty much from just east of Waterman all the way to Anderson.
So it's a fairly small part of the project.
And then the on-ramp, going eastbound on-ramp also.
Yeah, Phase 2 is widening the opening under the freeway, creating a circular on-ramp to the westbound 10, resituating the westbound off-ramp, and numerous other improvements And the whole project is on the order of $70 million. I believe about a third of that is acquisition of property, and about two-thirds is design, construction. And the whole project is, I think, slated to take about 2.5 years once it starts. So by somewhere in 14 or 15, it'll be done. So we're going to have some major traffic snafus on Anderson for many years.
Do you know when they're going to complete their property acquisitions?
The chance that they have right now, if you go by the Anderson today or tomorrow, you will see the old gas station on the northeast corner of Anderson and Mountain View, and the I-10 freeway. Because of the gas station, the state Regional Water Quality Control Board asked the sandbag to do investigation on the groundwaters in the soil. So they're doing boring right now on those two property. One is gas station.
Is that on our side or on the
No,
other side?
on the city of San Bernardino side.
And it's Tippecanoe.
On Tippecanoe, I'm sorry, Tippecanoe. And so that's the only two pieces of property that they have problem with right now.
But are they not having some issues with acquiring some of the other properties as well?
Well, there are always issues with the property, but as you know, with eminent domain, they try to negotiate for properties, and any properties that remain are subject to eminent domain seizures. And the law is such that the seizures can occur immediately, and what happens in arrears is the lawsuits regarding what the compensation will be. But the properties can be easily obtained.
So are you at a point where you're almost going to issue an eminent domain over there?
There have been no eminent domain. We're not planning any eminent domain seizures because we're still hopeful that the negotiations will proceed to fruition.
I think it's worth noting for any possible viewers that are still with us that there's going to be a lot of road construction in Anderson and Redlands Boulevard region. We're going to have Stewart Street that's going to begin in, what is that, August?
September.
Stewart Street is September. Okay. So we have Stewart Street construction, we have SBX construction also on Anderson, and then we're going to have the I-10 Tippecanoe on-ramp, off-ramp.
All at the same time.
So just to, people may want to start considering an alternate route, like Mountain View. Correct.
And Mountain View is a delightful way to go now because there's not a red light camera at Barton Road.
Just a quick. Go ahead, Mr. Brower. You had a
I was going to
question.
say, I'm sure there'll be alternate routes more on Lawton Street with our Redlands friends, too.
Mr. Daly, since you sit on the SBX, the Omnitrans board, what exactly will actually transpire in Anderson in relationship to the SBX line?
Help me out here, Jarb. There's going to be a stop.
Right. All the work that will be done in the city of San Bernardino, Loma Linda, it will be a parking lot on the west side of Anderson, just south of the, north of the channel.
North
really.
of the channel, yeah.
And then just a bus stop. That's it.
Which will be on the other side of the road. Will it?
There's a total of 4 bus stops.
Right.
Five?
Five.
5 bus stops, yes.
One on Anderson? Oh, 3. 3 on Anderson.
Two up, there's up by the university.
Yeah.
There's one on either side at Redlands, and then one up by the university. Then it comes around to the VA. And goes over by the Bank of America.
Okay. Have more stops than I recalled. So they'll be putting these stops in, which will mean widening the road. Right.
I have a couple of comments. My first is that we've only just begun to remove unnecessary stop signs. If anybody has any ideas, let me know. I've had a taste of red, and I'd like some more. My second comment is that with the construction on Anderson Street, it will have an adverse effect on some of the businesses there. And as part of my ongoing series of shameless plugs, I'd like to recommend, if you have any needs for a florist, Loma Florist on Anderson Street does a tremendous job of design and execution of very interesting floral arrangements. I recommend it highly. Next, we go to reports of officers. None. Okay, then the City Council is adjourned. We'll move to unfinished business on the other agendas. The Housing Authority. Are there any other items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Is there any public comment on any items not on the agenda? Seeing none. We've taken care of item number 1. We have the consent calendar.
I'll go ahead and move the consent calendar.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. We did item 4. Are there any member reports? Any reports of officers? Hearing none, we're adjourned. We move to the City Council as successor agency. We had our closed session report. Are there any items to be added or deleted? Any items? Okay, none. Okay, this is the last opportunity for the public to speak on any items not on the agenda. Seeing none, we move forward to the consent calendar.
I move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved, and we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. See you next month.
When is our next council meeting?
June 5, 12.
June 12, okay.